Now, there's a Reddit post that's going around that's actually gone viral about a former physician, and it's getting a lot of attention because it shows what medical professionals are dealing with when it comes to the pandemic, and specifically pandemic disinformation. For example, from QAnon. And so now the post is actually from our QAnon casualties. So that is a depressing place to go. Although there are some good stories of people coming back from the QAnon brink, those stories are few and far between. They're actually incredibly rare. More often, you're going to hear stories like this, where you had a doctor who obviously, of course, did not give their name, but he wrote that after more than 3 decades as a physician, the Q-Maniacs have succeeded in driving me out of providing care to patients. Now, he explains that, of course, that he's still going to be in the medical field, but he's not going to take care of patients. He's going to go to a job where he doesn't have to interact with sick people at all. Now he starts out by saying this. After, let's see. I've been able to deal with the years of patients who attended Google Medical School and the hours wasted explaining things such as why cinnamon cannot be used to treat diabetes, or that garlic and beetroot can't beat HIV. And Lord save me from essential oils. But then went on to explain that it wasn't all of that. No, he can handle all of that. But when COVID came, and QAnon specifically came, well, that was too much to deal with. And so, let me read that. Actually, before I do, when you do the news like I do, you're kind of disconnected, honestly. Because, look, when I read about, for example, how over 850,000 Americans have died of COVID-19, those are just it. You can't wrap your, again, those numbers are so big that we as human beings can't really wrap our little monkey brains around it, okay? It's so much to process that we can't imagine 850,000 Americans dead. Now, you can imagine people that are close to you, that are dead. You can imagine, small groups of people, but 850,000, I mean, it's hard for us to imagine. It's like trying to imagine the vastness of space. It's very, very difficult to put into context those kinds of numbers. But again, that's where the disconnect is. Cold, hard, unsympathetic numbers. Okay. Now, this story is important, and it's interesting because it puts it into a little bit more perspective. Okay, a human perspective about the patients and the doctors that have to treat these patients, even the ones that didn't believe that COVID was actually real. Again, maybe that's part of the fact that human beings are somehow not able to process things like a pandemic, which have affected millions of people across the world. And you look at those numbers, you're like, no way. There's no way it can come here, and if it comes here, there's no way it's actually real. But it is real. It is real. And so now, as he writes, the horrific deaths are beyond what you might imagine. The patients emerge almost unrecognizable to their families, if they even survive. Now, since June, he said, I've never seen a horrible case of someone who was vaccinated. So he's dealing with all unvaccinated people. I have seen people struggling to breathe through lungs that have hardened to near uselessness, begging us in their ignorance to give them the vaccine now. We can tell, almost without fail, which ones will die when they come through the door of the ICU. But we do everything in our power to keep them alive, knowing that we're basically just stretching out the inevitable. So again, that's the job of a medical professional, to do everything in their power to try to keep somebody alive. And again, in the case of COVID, they know what's going to happen. Now, again, as mentally difficult as seeing that carnage has to deal with, that's not actually the worst part about this. Now, he says, look, I can deal with all that. I can deal with seeing the effects that it has on people. I've worked in medicine for a very, very long time. It's just something that you kind of get used to when you're dealing with the sick and you're dealing with the dying. But in this case, and even with the pandemic, as difficult as it is, but he had a really difficult time dealing with the families. So in fact, he said, what I can no longer handle is the screaming, not from the patients, but from the families. They're not screaming in anguish or in recognition of how their foolishness has led them to the point. No, they're screaming at me because, you see, I am part of the global conspiracy to commit genocide. If only I would give them 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C, even though the body can absorb a maximum of 100 milligrams a day, with the rest creating the world's most expensive urine. They would be saved. Or hydroxychloroquine, or ivermectin. Those have never been studied, they assure me. And when I tell them that they have been, they snap that I don't know what I'm talking about. So, look, you can understand the frustration that this man or person, man or woman, it doesn't say, but that this person is feeling. And so they're saying, look, hey, look, we can't just give them things that aren't tested or tried, or proven. We can't do that. We're not going to do that. We're here to try to save lives, but there's only so much we can do. In reality, a lot of what, when it comes to COVID is prevention. And you can prevent this by getting vaccinated. Nonetheless, these people come in and they say, no, Joe Rogan knows more than you do. Podcaster hosts, YouTubers, they know better than you. Who is a doctor, who has spent his or her entire life dedicated to the pursuit of medicine. No. Dr. Google, right-wing website, American Patriots Against COVID.org, if that even exists, it probably does, they know more than you. The RNC knows more than you. My political preference knows more than you. But they don't. Again, it's kind of ridiculous. It's sort of like, I kind of liken it, even though this is not a perfect analogy, it's sort of like me telling a mechanic, hey, this is how you fix a broken head gasket. Well, obviously, I don't know how to do that. I could look it up, but unless I've been doing it for years, I'm probably going to make a mistake. I'm probably going to mess it up. Or actually, this is a better comparison. Me telling a mechanic that, no, I know, not only do I know how to fix a broken head gasket, I know how to fix it better than you. You see, how do you really fix it is by pouring a glass of chocolate milk into the engine. That will fix it. You're doing it wrong. You're going to blow up the engine if you do that. I have the real cure. See, I saw it on a video on YouTube once that if you just pour a thing of chocolate milk right into your engine, right into the oil, the oil fill, that's going to fix your head gasket. No, it's ridiculous. And by the way, it's also akin to telling the mechanic that he's part of a gigantic conspiracy to destroy not just my engine, but everyone's engine if you don't pour that chocolate milk in there right this fucking second. And again, the analogy even fails because it turns out that broken head gaskets are not the same as a virus that is transmissible. Like your car can't give a broken head gasket to another car. And so, but you get it. It's basically telling somebody, like you who knows nothing about that, because you haven't done that for your career. Everybody has different strengths, and it's not like I'm calling the person stupid who doesn't know. Ignorant, yes, but that's not even used as a pejorative. You just don't know because you haven't taken the training. And one or two videos is not going to be a substitute for 8 years of medical school. And so you get it. But now he asks this in response to those people. Quote, hey, if we're the ones responsible for killing their loved ones, then why the hell have they brought them to the hospital in the first place? Why throw them to our clutches? Now, I know the answer. They know it's all lies, but their egos are so huge, they can't bring themselves to admit it. Oh, well, there it is. 100%. So now, again, that alone was not enough to break him. There was a specific breaking point that he got to. And he tells the story specifically. Now, he explained that one time, good couple of weeks ago, he encountered a family, a husband, a father, 38 years old, a wife, 2 daughters, and a son. They were all of age to get vaccinated, but none of them were. Now, the father got COVID very, very badly. Severe case of COVID. All right. Now, it was so bad that they had to put him on a ventilator. And so, look, when you're on a ventilator, you have to be, basically sedated and paralyzed. So they give you a bunch of drugs, paralytics and everything, so that you can basically let the machine breathe for you, because you can't get enough oxygen otherwise. So now, when he was going through that with the severe COVID, he had a blood clot pooling in his leg. They had to amputate his leg to save his life, or to try to save his life. So, gone. There goes a leg. But it gets worse. So now, the doctor remarked about how when he was awake, the man had a look of terror in his eyes, and that he was crying from the pain. And he said, look, it was nothing new, but the begging over and over, don't let me die. And please give me the vaccine. And he said, all I could tell him is that we won't let you die. Although I never said we might not have any choice in that matter. And I told him repeatedly that it was just too late for the vaccine. Now, I've noticed this in a lot of these cases. Anti-vaxxers, they think they're going to be fine, safe from the virus. I'm young and healthy. I'm 38 years old. I'm also 38 years old. Now, look, even at my age, yes, we're fairly young, healthy, doing well for ourselves, got energy, living our lives. We're in the kind of the prime of our lives still, all right? But this guy thinks he's invincible, gets COVID and finds out not so invincible, as we all find out in some ways, sometime or another. And when he gets that severe COVID, the first thing they ask for, can I get the vaccine? Please give me the vaccine. Please, please, please. Now, of course, it's too late for it. Vaccines aren't cures. They're prevention. They help prevent serious illness. They could have turned that COVID case, if it, had been a breakthrough infection, which happens, would have turned that breakthrough into a mild case in which this man would have been able to survive. But unfortunately, that's not what happened, because this man is dying, and he knows he's dying. And so one of his last wishes is to have his family come in to see him so he could say goodbye. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, because his family refuses to wear a mask. They just refuse. Now, the nurse had told the wife that her husband was dying and that was begging to see them. But all she cared about was wearing a mask, or not wanting to wear the mask. She would only come if she and her daughters did not have to wear those masks. The nurse then came to me and told me that the wife wanted to speak to me. This is the doctor writing. I got on the phone and she ordered me to cure him with ivermectin and vitamin C and D. I explained to her that these do not work. They have been extensively studied, and the amount of ivermectin needed to treat even mild COVID would kill a human being. Once again, I was told I was ignorant. I asked her to come down to the hospital to bring her children, to at least wait outside. Somehow she agreed. Now, between the time of that phone call and the family showing up, the man unfortunately passed away. He then went to the parking lot to meet the wife anyway to give her the bad news. He said, I stepped outside, went to the wife, identified myself, told her that I was sorry, that we had done everything that we could, but her husband had passed a few minutes earlier. I did not manage to get the words out of the sentence fully out of my mouth when I had felt the first strike, my face, and heard the screamed words, "You murderer." I fell backwards, tripped, and plopped onto the pavement, the back of my head striking asphalt. I vaguely heard the words being screamed about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and God knows what else. I heard, "You could have saved him if you listened." I had tasted blood from the top of my lip. It took a moment to know it was seeping from my nose, which she had broken. My mask was getting wet and thus useless. Security grabbed her. They were getting ready to call the police, but I knew if I did, I would become the next national target for the Q-Maniacs. I told them just to put her in her car. I wasn't going to press charges. I went back to the hospital. I started looking for a new job that next day. I will never treat a patient again. Thank God. I mean, again, what a horrible story. Just absolutely awful. For everybody involved, by the way. The conspiracy theories believed by this family. The hydroxychloroquines and the vitamin C drips, the ivermectin, all that stuff. The belief that those, which again are not proven cures, would somehow have saved this man's life, when in reality, a free vaccine would have. The free vaccine that they refused to take, that the man had begged in his 11th hour with his final dying breaths, is difficult to say a word to push out. Begging for the vaccine that they could have taken, but they chose not to. Ignorance killed this man, not the doctor. Ignorance. Conspiracy theories. They kill. They kill. And again, this is why it's important to talk about the human cost of the pandemic. Again, we talk about all these numbers, these big numbers, how many percentage points the cases go up or down. And we talk about how many people have died this week in COVID, and it goes over our heads. But these are the personal stories. And by the way, we also don't address the stress endured by medical professionals now, who work tirelessly and have worked tirelessly since the beginning of this thing to keep people alive. And the strain it takes on them, the toll it takes on other people, mentally and physically. And of course, we also need to talk about the medical professionals who, before the vaccine was available, still risk their lives every day. Many of them lost their lives to try to keep people alive. This is the actual toll. And to get treated like this because of unhinged online conspiracies? I mean, and this isn't the only story like this. There are hundreds more stories, thousands more, probably just like this, waiting to be told. And you can add that to the stories of people losing family members, uncles, brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, all of these conspiracies to online insanity. And then eventually to COVID itself, in a lot of cases. That's the danger here. This is the danger that we're facing when it comes to online disinformation. When it comes to these conspiracy theories, which are causing real damage to human beings. And by the way, as I pointed out in many different instances, the people pushing these are doing so in order to make a profit. Imagine that, right? In this society, where again, you value your own personal profits over the lives of human beings. And you go and you convince people for money that no, don't take the thing that actually has been proven to work. Take the thing that hasn't been proven to work. Because trust me, I know better than the doctors. So just give me my money and I'll give you whatever charm or trinket or, medicine that you think you want. And whatever happens to you, happens to you. I don't care as long as I got my money. It's disgusting what is happening today. I wish we could bring people back to reality. I wish we could root out the bad actors. I'm not quite sure how. The only thing I can think to do is to continue telling the truth and telling the perspectives of the people who are living through this. I think that's the only way that I can try to fight back against the lies. And all I can do is hope that people start to see the light and finally realize what they need to do for their health. And that's to follow the medical science, the actual science, and stop listening to grifters. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.